Ladies and gents, welcome to a new episode of Laz Vic Live. I'm your host for this evening, Laz Vic, and tonight we have a very special episode for you tonight. A very talented comedian is coming on the show, and I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers out there on Facebook, on YouTube. Super appreciate you. Keep sending me messages and comments. I love it. Let me know if there's something new you want to see on the show. Let me know what your secret confessions are or any chocolate recipes. And with that said, we're going to bring on our first guest. Let's start the show. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Andrew Rich.
What's up, Laz? What's up, everybody?
Coming live straight from his vehicle. You are truly a comedian on the road, my man.
Live from a Wawa parking lot in Springfield, New Jersey.
That's awesome. So, tell us, what are you doing in this parking lot right now at the Wawa?
So we had plans to do this show tonight, which I was looking forward to, and then something came up at the Comedy Cove right around the corner, so I figured out a way to do both, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm at the Wawa.
Listen, I can't knock you, Rich. As most comedians, we are juggling multiple jobs at the same time, right? We both
For sure.
have day jobs, and then we are comedians also. So it's definitely a juggle, and I gotta commend the hustle, my man. So my first question to you.
I like this look. I like this. I like my lighting. I like the way I look in the car here. I think this is a better look than I would have had at home.
I think maybe you're onto something, Andrew.
Yeah.
I think you might want to start your own show from the Wawa parking lot.
Yeah, I'm going to do all my work Zoom calls from here.
Call it Wawa Chronicles, something like that.
For sure, for sure.
So, Andrew Rich, I've always wanted to ask you this since I met you. What is it like having two first names?
That's a good question. So my email address is just my last name at my company. So I get called my last name 3 or 4 times a day in emails and phone calls by people who've known me for 15 years. And they're not doing it like they think that's my first name when they speak to me. They don't even realize they're doing it. And you know what? I don't even call them out for doing it. I just go, it's fine. Some people apologize later on, and I just, I don't even notice it anymore.
I almost called you Drew a few times. Because I look at middle of names. I'm like a middle person. No, I get, dude, throughout my whole life, can you imagine how many times my name is screwed up? Lazaro. That's why I just shortened it to Laz. That's it. Easy, to the point. And I did that to...
You have 2 first names also.
I do. I gave myself 2 first names. That's actually a great point. That's a great point. I have a full last name, but again, no one could pronounce it, Yeah. So I shortened both my first and last name when I became a comedian. And I just did it to make it easy. And people now, like 15, 20 years later, people are like, did you do that to hide your identity and your nationality? And no, I just did it for easy email, easy remembering. There's no there's nothing behind it.
Laz, my bigger thing is I essentially have 2 different identities because depending how you know me, whether it's from work or from comedy or from growing up or from camp or from college, I am either Andrew or Andy, and it's very distinctive as to who calls me what. And it's confusing sometimes, but I can hear it. If somebody calls me Andy that normally calls me Andrew or vice versa, I can hear it. It almost goes through my stomach, goes through me.
So is it like 2 different personalities that you like?
A little bit. There's a little bit to that, yeah.
So, Andrew, for the audience, my very humongous audience that doesn't know you or your comedy, who are you? What would you say to a new person discovering you?
As a comedian or as a person? Just a
As,
person?
as anything you want, both.
I'm a family man. I have two kids. I have a wife. I've been married for 23 years. I met my
Wow.
wife when I was 9 years old at summer
Wow.
camp. Yeah.
Really?
We didn't start we didn't start dating then, but we've been dating since we were 18.
Wow.
So I'm very much I have my own thing. I work very hard for a living.
Mhm.
I do audiovisual production and sales and stuff like that. I work very hard, and then I like to gamble. I like playing poker. That's a big thing of mine. And then I do comedy.
Big poker player.
Activity. Yeah.
Okay.
Not a very good one.
My dad's a huge poker player.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's got his own hat. They call him Cuba Al, and he just has a hat that says Cuba Al, and he goes.
Where does he play?
In Miami, where all Cubans by law have to play after the age of 60. That's his primary place of play. So
I'll have to go down and visit him.
How'd you get into comedy?
Honestly, I really started. I say this on stage sometimes, but I started because I needed something else to do besides gambling, besides playing poker. I needed another outlet. I'd always done creative stuff. I've made a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff, and anytime we've had like birthday parties or anniversaries, I've always done like some type of big presentation at the party, and I've always had a lot of success. So it was always something I wanted to do. And when the time finally hit, I just kind of looked at various avenues, whatever those websites were that had had all the open mics listed. And
so you started at open mics, as a lot of comedians do.
Yeah, but I started at the age of like 46, 47, something along those lines. So I started very late.
Hey, listen, it's never too late to start comedy.
Yeah.
It's never too early to stop doing comedy, I always say.
I'm getting that feeling too, yeah.
So how long have you been doing comedy actively?
I started right before the pandemic. I started right around October of 2019.
So right before everything shut down, you decided to do a profession that requires being around groups of people. It's great.
Yeah, but I kind of said this too a lot, that when the pandemic hit, it kind of hit for me at a pretty good time. Like I had been doing comedy about 4 or 5 months, pretty hardcore, going out like to open mics every night. I finally done a show, like my first real show, like the week or so before the world shut down. And then, we had 6 months off, and I kind of needed it. I needed that break. And then coming back, I started coming back around September of 2020, and it was super casual. Nobody was worried about shows. It was just, you're just getting back at your own pace. And I felt it was a very well-timed break for me. And I feel like the pandemic sort of helped me in my comedy.
So that's good. You got in. It was like a nice little pandemic break. You got to do some writing. While the entire world was on fire, you got to find yourself and get into the comedy fully. I found the pandemic to be a very interesting time for comedians because lots of us were doing lots of Zoom shows or really awkward outdoor shows. I recall a show of just cars beeping at me for laughter. So it was definitely interesting.
Did one of those.
Oh my God, so interesting doing that. People flashed their lights. Like it was so surreal. But we did it. We're comics. So what are you finding are the challenges for you? Like, what did you discover doing comedy that you didn't realize?
I mean, I've had a good time with it. I've really, work is always such a frustrating thing that I deal with, that I really intentionally try to never let comedy get to me. So, you don't hear back from somebody. You don't have a great night. I never really, I'm a very different person in the comedy world than I am in my real life. If you guys saw me like working every day, you'd be like, who is this guy? What a he's just mean and nasty and everything. And I'm the opposite in comedy. Um, but I would say the biggest challenge, because of how open mics work and even shows work, what do we normally get? 15 minutes for a good show. Open mic, you're doing 5 minutes. I find it
Yeah.
hard to develop longer bits. That would be the
You're finding it a challenge to get in. Yeah, and that's absolutely a challenge. If you're doing 5 and 15 minutes, absolutely, that's a whole different animal. And it's hard to develop comedy when you're not in front of an audience, right? That's something that I learned. Like, you can't just sit and you have to develop it,
well, you
in
think
front of
you
crowds.
I practice in my car pretty regularly, and I kill in the car, and then and then you go out and you're like, all right, none of that landed. I don't really get it, but
Yeah.
I find like I could do that. That's pretty much how I write. I record myself, and
Good.
then I'll kind of listen to it, write things down. So I do think to some extent I can create some stuff on my own, but yeah, you have to do it in front of an audience. That's the only way to really test it and know it.
So, have you met some interesting people in your comedy journey?
Yeah, I mean, I've loved the comedy world. Like I've really, since day one, I've kind of just taken to it. Various comedians, various producers, various just anything. I've really enjoyed the people. We were talking before about the pandemic, and one of my closest friends was Anthony Quinn, who
Yes.
who unfortunately passed. And
Yes.
when we were coming out of that pandemic in like September, he was hosting a mic twice a week in the city. And
Wow.
we would go every, Tuesday and Thursday into the city to whatever that place was, the Cellar 77 it was called. And it was just such a tight knit little thing. It was like 8 of us in a room, and it would be like six of the same people would be there every week. But I would say of all the characters, Anthony was probably the most unique character I've met in the entire bunch.
Big shout out to Anthony Quinn. We miss him. I had the pleasure of meeting Anthony through you, Andrew. So I thank you for that. He
Nice.
was quite the character. For the short time that I knew him, he was amazing to know. And he would call me weekly. He would just drop, a call. And I love that, and I think that's part of the magic of being in this comedy community, that you have those types of memories. And,
Yes.
these gigs aren't easy. It's after the pandemic, and you have a family, and you're going to the city, and it's in,
Yep.
In questionable places and small audiences, but that's what makes you a comic, right? That's what
Yeah,
makes you help you develop into your style. Have you found a style? Do you think you have, like, when you're writing, do you hear your voice yet? Or you feel you're still developing?
I always wonder about that. I'm working hard on trying to be a little bit more mellow on stage. The challenge I have is that most of the shows that I do, I end up being in the host role. So, when you're hosting a show, I always look at it as your responsibility is more to the show than to yourself. So being upbeat, being energetic,
Mhm.
you can't really come in with like more of a a softer or more of a mellow approach.
Yeah.
I don't think it plays as well. So it's kind of hard to find that balance. But when I do get the opportunity to kind of, do a set, perform on a show where I'm not hosting, I really make an effort to keep it back a little bit, not be as
Yeah.
high octane, not be as energetic, just kind of keep it down.
So do you find it harder hosting?
It's just different. It's different. I mean, obviously the hardest part about hosting is you're going up first. So
Yeah.
you're walking into a complete cold room. But again, I try and find that unique spin. I try and put my own footprint on it. But it's more your commitment to the show and
And
to
I
the
think that's a
audience
great
and
point.
keeping everybody together.
I think that's a great point. And the reason I ask, because I've actually been having conversations with other comedians about hosting, because I've seen this trend going around where they're like, they consider the host to be the low man on the totem pole. Then so they put the newbie. And for me, you know, not that I'm an expert, I've only been in comedy for 25 years, but for me, the host is the most important and the hardest role of a comedy show, because you're setting the tone for the entire night. And so, like you said, you're going up cold. You can't really do your set, a complete set. You know, you're breaking it up, and you have to have a little bit higher energy or different type of energy. So, you know, it is the hardest role. So the more you host, in my opinion, the better comedian you're going to become, right? Because it's just a harder spot. Even like, I used to get put in the first slot a lot, all the time and it just made me stronger and strong. Not that I'm the strongest in the world, but it helped me develop, because I was going up to cold every night, you know?
Yep.
And now I love it. I love going up in front of cold audiences.
Yeah.
You know, it's because it's a challenge.
The thing that I've always admired about your comedy the most, and I think I've said this to you directly, you have such a commitment to your bits. You know, I've seen you do, you know, bits that are 10, 15 minutes long, and you're just so committed to them, and you know that they're going to work, and you know you're going to get some laughs, and they're really, it's really impressive to watch. And that's the main thing I've seen about you, is just you're so committed to it, and do a really nice job with it.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for sticking to the script of our podcast tonight. You will have your check in the mail. I appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Amazing. No, I really do appreciate that, my man. We, as you know, this comedy community, especially the New Jersey comedy community, we work super hard. It's a small group. Like, everybody knows each other, you know? Everybody's working, everybody's doing their thing. And I admire anyone that gets up on that stage, whether it's full-time, part-time, once a month, it doesn't matter. Just getting up there helps you grow as a person. You know, it's like a chess game. Every time you play chess, you learn something about yourself, you know?
And we've had those moments where, you know, we go to Rhino and we do the show, and then they have the open mic afterwards. And I'm like, Laz, you going to stay for the open mic? You're like, yeah. And I'm like, come on, just do it. And then you thank me afterwards for me making you do the
you know what?
mic.
I need to be pushed too, Andrew. I need to, because, you know, there are some nights where you're just tired. It's been a long week. But if I'm there and there's an open mic, of course I should be going up there.
Yeah. What's an extra hour? You know, like, think about all the other efforts you have to make to get out to comedy. You're already there. Just do it.
Yeah, and big shout out to Rhino Comedy Club, one of my all-time favorite it's my home club.
Mine as well. That is the Rhino is the main reason that I was able to not only get into comedy but stick with comedy. I give them all the credit in the world.
Look at that. The energy in that comedy club is unlike any other place. I liken it to the Comedy Store in the early days of LA. Yes, I said it. Rhino Comedy Club is like the Comedy Store in the early 80s.
Yeah.
There's an energy going on in there. You know, it's small, but it's mighty. You have amazing comedians showing up in this room, and it's now consistently selling out. So
yeah, it's incredible.
Go to rhinocomedyclub.com, get your tickets. When are you there next?
I think I'm there the first week of March. I believe I'm hosting the show that Saturday.
Beautiful.
I think it's March 3rd. Yep.
Beautiful. I'll be there March 23rd.
Nice.
So, Andrew, before we start the news, my last question to you, is there any experience that you had, good or bad, in comedy that sticks out to you?
You know what? I would say one of the things that I've always tried to do with comedy is I've always tried to put myself in a position where I provide value in any way possible. So, like, I realize how competitive it is, how difficult it is to get stage time, and you want to make relationships. And I think back to, early on, I was helping a comedian who I hardly knew. I helped him with making some flyers for some shows, and I made a few for him. I never even asked him to get on one of the shows that I was making flyers for, and then finally, he asked me to be on one of the shows. I did. I ended up giving a different comedian a ride home from that show. Her name is Janice Massetti, and as a result of that, I did her show in the city. She has a weekly show at Broadway.
That's right.
And then I started partying with her, and now I've done that show. I've done that show pretty much every week for a year and a half at Broadway.
Amazing.
And it all stemmed from just kind of putting yourself out there and providing value. And now she's obviously a close friend of mine. And
she's amazing. Shout out to Janice, Broadway Comedy Club. She has been doing that show I don't know how many years. She is an amazing host of that show. Like I said, being the host is the most important role in my eyes. And as you look at Janice, she's a pro host. She knows what she's doing in that room. That room, by the way,
a very warm environment for the.
That room is not an easy room. That's a tough New York room in there.
Yeah, she does a great job. She creates a warm environment for the audience, for the comedians. She'll do shows that are like 2.5 hours sometimes, and nobody leaves, and it's really great.
Well, she won't let you leave. I mean, there's no there's no leaving. There's no leaving her show.
That's not true.
No, I love Janice. Shout out to her. Also, big shout out to Mr. Al Martin, who passed away, owner of the Broadway Comedy Club in New York City. So big shout out to him. He was instrumental in my comedy journey as an early comedian. He provided a space, the New York Comedy Club, as well as Broadway, to a young comedian that didn't know anything or anyone. He had a show and he let me get on it, and I worked in his room every Sunday for a year after that, So big shout out to Al Martin and the comedy family over there.
Also a poker player. He was a poker player.
Oh, he was a poker player? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So big hugs to the comedy. The comedy community has lost a leader, and big hugs to the whole comedy family and everyone that was affected by that. Andrew, we have some very interesting news stories here that I wanted to share with you. I wanted to get your opinion tonight before your show, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Bringing up the first news story here. Meet Shashila, South Korea's impossible-looking influencer. And Andrew, you're not going to be able to see this picture. It's a shame. A South Korean social media influencer has become conquering the internet with photos so heavily edited that people can't help but like them. Now, check this influencer out, guys.
Very blurry to me, but she looks all right. Can't really tell.
Can you tell the editing in this, if there was any editing at all?
I'm 50, Laz, and I'm in a car and it's on my phone. I can barely see it.
You know what? It's very subtle, Andrew. It's very subtle. She does some light editing to elongate her one arm. One arm is a lot longer than the other.
Okay, I could see that. I could see a long arm there. Yes, now I see that.
I think her entire head has been shrunk ever so slightly.
And this is a real person? This is real?
Apparently, this is a real person with extremely long arms. And she has gone viral for her absolutely brilliant editing skills. It's the only thing I could say. Shashila looks unreal in every photo posted on her Instagram. She has an impossibly small waist, huge breasts, freakishly long limbs and neck, and a very small head.
All right.
So the thing of beauty, Andrew.
Have you seen some of the there's an Instagram account out there of a woman, and she's like a model, but she's AI. She's not even real. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen I believe it though. I believe that there's already an AI model that's taking the internet. This looks very natural, this shot of Shashila. The head is just amazingly small. I don't know how her body, I mean, it just doesn't. Okay, this is amazing.
What is she selling?
I don't. I think it's just she's an influencer of herself.
Gotcha.
You need a whole different level of confidence to edit your photos to the extent where the floor and all get wobbly, but still posted on the internet. Just amazing, Shashila.
I can't even figure out how to make my teeth not look yellow, you know?
So shout out to this influencer. Just an amazing job. Our next story, Andrews. Employee gets fired for his stand-up jokes, takes legal action against the company, and wins.
Wow.
This is a good one. So this was posted on January 9th, 2024. We all have activities outside of work. They usually don't bother anyone. Well, this one Redditor found out that these activities can cost you your job. When his day job found out about the stand-up comedy bit he does on the side, the guy was fired on the spot. However, he wouldn't go down that easily and took the matter to court. So working while pursuing... I'm sorry?
Does it say what the content was? Does it say anything about what he was talking about that led to his firing?
It does. I believe he was working for this company, and he's been doing comedy for a couple of years. Let me see if I can backtrack. It says exactly, but it was like a harmless bit. My boss team all knew and didn't care that he did stand-up. My stage name is just my first name and last initial. I never talk about work. But recently, I got called into a meeting with no warning and fired on the spot for egregious violations of Y values. I guess that stands for something. My act isn't clean, deals with dark stuff. I'm a former Marine, an Arab Muslim from West Virginia. I'm used to being a war correspondent and EMT. So he's got to have some crazy stand-up. But all in my clips, it's room full of people laughing. I told them I'm a complete unknown, no real fan base. If you're at my level and try to do edgelord stuff, you just bomb. I told them I get booked at different shows, Poconos, white people, black, every type of person. They didn't care. It's like they mentally edited out the audience. So then he took it to court. He's explained the whole story. I'm trying to run through it quickly. But the court sided with him. They called him racist, sexist, every name in the book. That's crazy.
So what's the result of the judgment? What does he get for winning?
He says, I won. They made a judge watch an hour of my stand-up and made every harebrained attempt to paint him as a racist and hateful, and they lost. It says, although the employee's ruling regarding outside conduct is quite broad, even considering the content of his act to come within those rules, the obvious theme of his performances was social unfairness and hypocrisy rather than discrimination. Wow, so the judge literally had to look at the context of his material, and the judge decided that he was not being racist or sexist. He was talking about social unfairness.
This is a story I could feel this one. You know, I'm a salesperson, and you know, I always have a fear, like if a clip of mine gets out, even if it's a benign clip, like I'm not gonna get fired, but maybe I lose a client, and that would stink. So I feel this one.
Yeah, I feel it too. Definitely, I definitely feel this one too. The judge ruled in the man's favor, and the company had to reinstate him with a full year's back pay.
That's not bad.
But it's like, now, how do you continue in that work environment? You know, how do you?
You don't. You go work somewhere else. You have a year to find a new job.
Yeah, I guess so. Or become a stand-up full time.
Yeah.
Is that something you think about, Andrew, becoming a stand-up full time?
You know, the way I've always put it is, I'll do my job for a while, and then, you know, in a few years, again, I'm not young. I'm 50 years old. So instead of
you're still young, dude. It's young. You look like a baby. You look like a baby. Look at you. Look at that face. You look like you're 33.
Nah. I feel like, when I leave my primary job, whenever it is, maybe I could put myself in a position to scrap out a living, instead of getting a second job that maybe doesn't, wherever I would work, who knows, maybe I could eke out a living doing this when I'm 55, 60, whatever it might be, and just kind of live off of savings. But that's pretty much the extent.
Gotcha. So maybe we can start a show in Boca Raton in our 60s together. And
that's the dream.
And wear tuxedos, like matching tuxedos, and we'd take turns headlining. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm in. I'll sign for that right now.
I've thought about it a lot, I've thought about it a lot. I used to do stand-up full-time.
Yeah.
For a good 5 years, that's all I did. And let me just tell you, those 5 years were the craziest, wildest, most stressful, I almost died several times in a journey in my life. And it was short. 5 years is quick.
So
you got to hang on.
Do you enjoy stand-up more when you're doing it on the side or when you were doing it for a living?
That's a great question. When you're doing it for a living and you're doing it for money, your stand-up changes, right? You're relying on it for money. So
right.
It's going to change your writing. It's going to change your everything. I don't know if that's good or bad. It was a little good and a little bad. But now when I write and perform comedy, it's a lot more relaxed. Maybe there's not that urgency.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think maybe it's taking me longer to develop, maybe. But I'm a lot more relaxed because I can't be a starving artist. I can't.
Right. You said this to me once. You said, I have a job. I have multiple jobs. I do this. I do that. With comedy, I do what I could do, and I make the most of it, and I do what I could do, and that's what we do. We do what we could do. That's
it. You know what I mean? It's like, in the early days, of course you want fame. If you want your own sitcom, you want money, But then after like the 10-year mark, after you hit 10 years, then you go through the bitter phase, like you become bitter, and then you break through that, and it's like you shed skin, And then you go through the I don't care phase. And there's so many phases, dude. And then finally you get to the, hey, I'm pretty good phase.
I'm not there yet.
It takes some people 6 months. It takes other people 25 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something you have to love. You have to love comedy to do it. This story says, I took a stand-up comedy class and it was better than therapy.
Nice. Interesting.
You don't have to be an aspiring comic to reap the benefits of performing a tight 10. I like how she put tight 10 in quotes. Oh. So this story is about someone who was feeling under-challenged at work and creatively stale. So they decided to stand up for a 4-week stand-up class. And she says, here's the thing, I'm not funny, or at least I don't consider myself anywhere near funny when I started. I was 50-something working mom who loved the first season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Have you seen this show?
I know of the show. I've maybe seen about 10 minutes of it, but yeah.
Same. I haven't really had a chance to sit down, but I hear good things. So basically, this story is about a comedian, because once you decide to get on stage, you're a comedian. That's it.
Okay.
So this comedian in her 50s, mom, challenged herself, got out of her comfort zone, got on the stage, and it became a sort of therapy for her. And I agree.
Yeah.
I think comedy is one of the best things you can do for the soul. Laughing, making people laugh. It fulfills some of that hole that we all experience from time to time. Don't you agree, Andrew?
I do for sure. Plus, it's probably like, a fifth of the price of therapy. So you're saving a few bucks there too.
That's mainly one of the reasons I stay in comedy, Andrew. It's I get paid for free therapy, so I can go up there and talk to strangers. You know what's funny? I find it harder to do shows in front of people I know than strangers. Do you get that too?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, it depends. If you have a couple of friends in the audience, that's one thing, not a big deal. If you have 15, 20 people in the audience and there's only 25 people in the audience, yeah, that's a terrible situation. Nobody wants that.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's weird. It's like the more strangers there are, the calmer I feel, the more comfortable I feel. But if I
would agree.
If friends start popping and go, hey, I just came, hey, and they pop, I'm like, oh man, what if I have bad, you know what I mean? Like friends, especially friends you haven't seen in years, they pop in.
Yeah. Yeah, like when you didn't even know they were coming and you were just ready to try some new stuff that night, and then your friends show up. That's a tough spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost all my friends in the early days when I invited them to all my bringer shows. I lost all of them.
Yeah, I don't have any friends left either.
I had some terrible, terrible, terrible shows. I remember some shows that were so bad, dude, and I invited coworkers to. Because when you're an early comic, you make these mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have no friends left because of just not the bringers, but just because you do comedy so often on Fridays and Saturdays and whatever. When do you get to see these friends? And it's a big thing. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Kind of bothers me.
So it bothers you that you don't have a social life? Is that what you're saying?
It's not that I don't have a social life. I mean, if you're gonna do comedy, you got to go all in. Like you can't just I'll just do it now. I'll do it. Yeah. You gotta commit to it, whatever that means, whatever your definition of all in means. But it doesn't really leave time to go out on a
not at all
with your wife and another couple and do this and do that. It's just there's only so much time.
Dude, at least you're married. You did all that. You gotta. I have no social. I have no time for anything. Zero. Nothing. Yeah. Okay,
We're doing it though, Laz. We're doing what we need to do.
We're doing it. Last story of the evening. Just be yourself, Andrew. 20-year-old woman lives in the 1980s, and she couldn't be happier.
What does that mean?
I couldn't be happier for her, too. Okay, so this girl lives in the 80s. She dresses 80s. Her room is decorated with posters from the 80s. Her bed covers are 80s. Her nails, the music she listens to from the 80s. Everything. She goes to the mall still, even though it's empty.
Let me tell you something, Laz. Get this woman, get 200 more of them, and put them in an audience for me, because that's my target demographic right
there. The content creator, who has been living in the 1980s lifestyle since her early teenage years, recalled, "Withstanding bullies, I was heavily picked on in school for things other than my style. And so when I changed up my style, people were really shocked. My parents took a while for my style to grow on them, and everyone currently accepts me, except for the trolls on social media." Well, Jordan has been creating
social media. How does she have social
media? That's true. She's in the 80s. What are you doing?
It doesn't make sense.
You're not supposed to be on social media.
Yeah. What is that?
That's a great point, Andrew.
I thought she was at home watching like Different Strokes and The Facts of Life.
That's like an Amish person watching TV. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Jordan has been creating content themed around the 1980s for social media. That's what it is.
She's fake.
She has 729,800 followers on TikTok. Andrew, I have 252 followers.
Yeah, you're lucky.
She has 729,800.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good. And I envy her, Andrew. I want to live in the 80s too.
I'd like to know what that means more. Like I'm an 80s expert. 80s are my thing. Like, what is she doing? What is she doing that makes her live in the 80s? Doesn't make sense.
So
it's a paradox. If she's on social media, it's a paradox.
What is the most 80s thing you have, Andrew? Or like, what is the most '80s movie you remember?
I would. The thing about me is I know, you name a movie line from the '80s, you name a band or a song, I could tell you who sang it. You say the movie line, I could tell you the movie. You tell me the movie, I'll tell you how many actors there were. I remember everything, but I don't, obviously I don't remember yesterday, but I remember everything from 1985.
But yesterday you have trouble with, but 85, Back to the Future years, you remember.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, man, I mean, going to the movies in the 80s, what was better than that? There was nothing more fun than that, no?
That was the best. Going to the movies in the 80s was the best experience. I used to go weekly.
Of course.
People don't go to the movies weekly anymore.
I haven't gone to the movies since 2019, I think.
Do kids even go to the movies? Like,
not. I mean, my son goes. I think my son has gone a bunch of times. They see like the Avengers, and they see I don't know, whatever those movies are. They go, but it's not like when we used to go. We used to go literally every weekend. Sometimes there were times I saw 2 movies in a night.
Me too.
Yeah.
There were weekends where I didn't leave the movie theater.
Right.
I just snuck in and wandered around.
Yeah. Of course. That was the best. That was literally.
We want to live in the 80s too. Andrew, my man, I know you have a show and you have fans waiting for you right outside the vehicle.
Yep, absolutely.
And they're waiting for you. Where are you at tonight?
Comedy Cove.
Where's that at?
In Springfield. Scotty's Comedy Cove, Springfield, New Jersey.
Awesome. I would love to do Scotty's Comedy Cove. I've never done Scotty's Comedy.
Really?
Never done it. Never done it. I need to call or find a contact there. I would love to do that.
All right, we'll talk offline.
Awesome. My man, thank you so much for coming on Laz Vic Live.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This was fun. Thanks,
This was fun. This will be heavily edited into my favor. And I just want to thank you once again for being a good sport and coming on the show and downloading Discord. I know you're from the 80s, that you don't like that.
That was easy.
This is the longest conversation we ever had, but this is why I do the show, Andrew, to learn from my fellow comics.
We haven't had long conversations, Laz, but we've had good ones, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you once again for coming on the show. You want to plug your channel or somewhere where people can find you?
My Instagram is Andrew_Rich_comedian. That's who I am.
Check out Andrew Rich and his social media channels. Tell him Laz sent you. Guys, it's been an awesome comedy podcast. If you like this type of content, please like, please subscribe, please comment, please share with all your friends. Let them know. Say hello in the comments. Let me know you're there. I want to thank you for joining us once again, and watch out for a future episode of Laz Vic Live. Thank you.